Isaac, I want to start with something a little different, though, that was in progress in the hour before we actually came on the program. The president was addressing legislators in Cape Town, I believe. What are the main policy priorities that you've heard from him as far as this government of national unity is concerned?
Good evening. The president's address this evening was centered on reviving economic growth. He spoke a lot about inclusive growth, and that would entail, for instance, boosting small and medium enterprises and growing the informal sector of the economy. And they also focused on, power generation reforms and also investments in that sector. Basically, you will be aware of the power supply challenges we've faced in South Africa for a couple of years. The situation is much better now, but we still need to do a lot to stabilize the national grid and ensure that power supply is steady. The president also focused on improving governance, particularly at the local municipal level, because that's where small businesses really get to encounter all these constraints that contain the growth. So it was quite an encouraging speech, and we just hope that the government will accelerate all those objectives.
Indeed, and we'll certainly probably have a bit more analysis on that later on tomorrow. But let's focus on the central bank. The Monetary Policy Committee holding rates earlier today, and the governor and the MPC in general arguing that, look, the inflation outlook for South Africa has improved somewhat, but they're still fairly cautious here. Walk us through their assessment of where inflation is likely to be this year and next year.
Sure. When you look at the numbers released by the South African Reserve Bank today, I mean, they're looking a lot better. The expected inflation figure for the final quarter of this year is 4.3%. And from there, the Reserve Bank expects inflation to be pretty much around the 4.5% level, which is its target, until the end of the forecast period, that is end of 2026. But what I picked up from the statement is that the Central Bank Committee is worried more about inflation expectations. In the latest survey, the inflation expectations are hovering around the 5% level for the next 3 years. And I believe that the South African Reserve Bank held off on a cut today just to ensure that inflation expectations are well anchored.
How concerned do you think that the Reserve Bank is with the possibility that, the next time they meet, I believe the next meeting in September, and it's roughly around the same time that the Fed is meeting, and the sentiment we sort of pick up from a lot of other central banks in frontier markets, emerging markets is, look, we don't want to cut now because we don't know what the Fed is going to do. We prefer to essentially keep our powder dry until the Federal Reserve starts to cut. Is that a concern for the South African Reserve Bank as well, that they don't want to be on the wrong side of that curve?
Well, it seems that it's a concern, although the governor of the South African Reserve Bank always stresses rather that the South African Reserve Bank observes what the US Fed is doing, but does not follow the US Fed. And this time around, you're quite right, the US Fed will announce its decision a day before the South African Reserve Bank meets on the 19th of September. And we basically expect the Fed on the 18th of September to release a dovish statement, and that should give the South African Reserve Bank room to start cutting the following day. But generally, the inflation forecast out of the South African Reserve Bank today indicates that a cut is imminent, and even the pattern of voting out of the 6 committee members of the South African Reserve Bank, 2 favored a cut today. And that usually is a precursor of a change in direction. This time around, a cut.